The notes page is number 50 in your notebook. So go ahead and put a 50 in the corner. Let's start by looking at the types of equations that we're going to be learning in today's lesson. We are only going to be looking at linear equations. Linear equations are equations that make straight lines. We will not be looking at other types of equations that make curved lines or parabolas or cubics or anything like that. In order to tell if a line is linear or nonlinear, you look at the equation. If the equation has variables that are only raised to the power of 1, nothing greater than the power of 1, then they are linear. So look at example 1. Find the variables. We have a variable y and we have a variable x. Do either one of those variables raise to a power greater than 1? You're just looking at the board. Or either one of those greater than 1, power rate greater than 1? No. So this one is a linear equation. We can tell just by looking at it. Number 2, do either one of those variables have a power greater than 1? Yes, if you look at x, it has x squared. So this one is not going to make a straight line. So this one would be nonlinear. Number 3, would that be linear or nonlinear? Nonlinear, because x is being cubed, which means that it's going to be a curved line. Number 4, linear or nonlinear? Linear. Great job. None of the x and the y are just to the first power. What about number 5? Linear. It is also linear. Y is not being squared or cubed or any other power. It's just at y to the first. And what about x? It's also linear. Okay. Now there is something that's a little different about these last two equations if you look at them. Number 5 only has a y. It doesn't have the variable x. Where number 6 has the variable x and it doesn't have a y. So in these two examples, you're missing one of the letters. These are called special cases, and their graphs look a little different. We're going to talk about them in a little while in our lesson. Okay? So first, let's look at parts of a linear equation. Linear equations can be written in different forms, but we're going to look at a special form called slope-intercept form. It is the first type of place that an equation can be written, the first way that we can write one. And we like it because you can look at the equation and tell a lot of information just by looking at it. Okay? So we really like slope-intercept form. So it's the easiest to work with. It gives you everything that you need. It's easy to graph. It's easy to talk about what the graph's going to look like just by having it written in the form called slope-intercept form. So that's the one we're going to learn first. Okay? Slope-intercept form is known as y equals mx plus b. So the equation will always have the letter y here, an equal sign, an m value with an x, and then I have some plus b value here. Here it tells you that it's user-friendly because it allows us to graph quickly without using a t-table. That's kind of what I was talking about. We really like it. We can tell a lot just by looking at an equation written in that form. And so now we're going to look at the different parts of it. We're going to identify the most important piece of the equation, which is called the slope. All right, so when we have our equation, we know that the first thing is the plus b. Whatever value this is known as your y-intercept. So on your paper, there's an arrow pointing to b, and there's a box below it. Fill that in with y-intercept. We call the plus b the y-intercept. All right, on your notes, you have a definition of y-intercept. It says y-intercept is where the line crosses the blank. Well, we call it the y-intercept because it's where the line crosses the y-axis. So fill in the blank with the word y-axis. I can write it right here for you. Y-axis. axis, for those of you watching the video. All right, now let's talk about the other numbers. The letter m is known as the slope in the equation. And we're going to come back at the end of our lesson and give a definition of slope. We're going to leave it blank for now. We're at the top of your paper where it says define slope. We're going to come back to that at the end of our lesson. Actually, we'll probably come back to it on Monday and talk about it a little bit more, okay? But let's kind of talk about slope in terms of x. Well, it is the coefficient of x is known as the slope. We've talked about the word coefficient. What does that mean? What is a coefficient? Ethan? The number in front of the variable. So your slope is always going to be the number that's in front of x. Okay? So it's the value of the coefficient in front of for x. Slope is also called the constant rate of change. That's a blank on your paper. Constant rate of change. Your pencil should be moving. And we can also write it as rise over run when we are graphing. So already we know tons of different names for this thing called slope. We call it m in our equation. It's known as slope. It's the coefficient of x. It's the constant rate of change. And it's also rise over run. Man, this guy is popular. He has a lot of different names. All right. When we need to write slope as a fraction, if it's a whole number like 3, we can make that a fraction as 3 over 1. Or if we need it as negative 5 and we need it as a fraction, we just make it a fraction by putting negative 5 over 1. Basically, you can make any whole number a fraction by putting it over 1. If it's already a fraction, like 3 over 2, then you just leave it alone. Abby, sit up. All right, 4 states of slope. We have positive slope, which goes uphill from left to right. Fill that one in. This one goes in your notes. We have negative slope, which goes downhill from left to right. We have zero slope, which is a horizontal line. And we have undefined slope, which is a vertical line. These are the 4 types of lines of linear equations. They're either going to be positive, negative, zero, or undefined type of slopes for any linear equation. Math is just like reading. You always read from left to right. This also applies to reading slope. Okay, so when we look at our graphs, okay, let me draw just a quick little axis here. When we're looking at a graph, we're always going to start on this side and move from left to right to decide if it's going uphill, downhill, or if it's vertical or horizontal. Okay? All right, let's look at some examples. Example number 1 on your paper. Start on the left side of the graph and moving towards the right. What is happening to this red line that is graphed on it? It's moving which direction? Uphill from left to right. So this would have what type of slope? A positive slope. Underneath the graph on your paper, write positive. Example 2. You start on the left side of your graph, and as you move towards the right, it's going which direction? Downhill. So this one has what type of slope? Negative slope. Underneath that graph, please write the word negative. Example 3. We start on the left side of the graph, and as we move right, we notice it is a flat line from left to right, which is known as a horizontal line. What type of slope does a horizontal line have? Zero slope. Underneath that graph, please write 0. And the last type we notice is a vertical line up and down. And it has what type of slope? Undefined. So write undefined under that one. Another way to help you remember is if you think about riding your bike. If you ride your bike up the hill in the first graph, it's going to positively affect you. You're going to be breathing heavy. It's going uphill. All right, the -1, you're going to be riding your brakes the whole way down. Super easy. It's going to have negative impact. The 0 slope, if you're riding your bike on very flat ground, that's going to have 0 impact on you. That's the best riding conditions. Very flat ground. You can go as fast as you want. Nothing's forcing you to go faster or pulling against you from going up a hill. So it's flat ground, 0 slope. And then the last one is a straight wall that goes straight up into the air. Could you ride your bike up that? No, it would be impossible. So this one is undefined. All right, now we're going to draw Mr. Slope. On the right-hand side of your paper, it says Mr. Slope. You can see it. And we're going to draw a picture to help us remember the 4 states. So go ahead and draw a circle on your paper for his face. His left eye is going to be a plus sign to represent our positive slope. And his right eye is going to be a minus sign to represent our negative slope. On the left side, since it's a positive slope, we're going to draw an eyebrow that demonstrates uphill from left to right. On the right side, we're going to draw a line that represents a negative slope, so downhill from left to right. All right, for the nose, we're going to draw our vertical line. So draw a very straight up and down vertical line. And what type of slope did we say a vertical line has? Undefined. So we're going to draw the letter U for undefined. That's his nose. And then the last one, for his mouth, we're going to draw our horizontal line. And a horizontal line is a straight, flat line. So make sure it's very flat, it doesn't curve. And what type of slope does a horizontal line have? 0. So in the corners of his mouth, put little zeros. Kind of like dimples, definitely. So this is just something that can help you to remember the different types of slope. A lot of students get undefined and 0 slope mixed up. They can't remember which one's which. So if you think back to this picture, you can say, oh, the straight line was his nose and it had a U to represent undefined. Or the flat line was 0 slope because it had the little zeros in the corners of his mouth. Okay? So you can give him some ears or freckles or whatever you want, some hairs, chin. Decorate him. All right. Okay, now I'm going to show you a series of graphs, and these are not on your paper. So you're just going to look at them, and then I'm going to count to 3, and you're going to tell me which type of slope it has. You're either going to say positive, negative, undefined, or 0. Okay? So you're going to wait, you're going to look at it, pause, and then I'm going to count to 3, and you're going to tell me which type of slope. So look at this one. 1, 2, 3. That's a negative slope. If you start on the left side, it's going downhill from left to right. Number 2. 1, 2, 3. This one's also negative. If you start on the left side, it's going downhill. This one is, go back to the first one. This one is negative slope. It's very steep. The second one is also a negative slope, but it's not as steep. They are both still going to be negative slopes. All right, the next one. 1, 2, 3. Positive. This one's going uphill from left to right. Example 4. 1, 2, 3. Undefined. Remember, you can't ride your bike straight up a wall. It's impossible. If you're not getting them, look at your notes. You just wrote them down and the pictures are already labeled. So just read what you wrote. And the next one. 1, 2, 3. Zero slope. It's very flat. It's our horizontal line. 1, 2, 3. Negative. This one's downhill from left to right. All right. Find this on the bottom of your paper on the front. For example 1, you need to write y equals negative 3x plus 9. For example 2, write y equals x minus 4. For example 3, write y equals negative 5. All right, on your paper it says finding slope given an equation in slope-intercept form. So now I've given you the equation, you copied them down on your paper. They want us to find the slope. Which letter is the slope? M. And they also want us to find the y-intercept. What letter is the y-intercept? B. So here is our equation. Y equals mx plus b. We're going to apply that in number 1. Looking at number 1, what would the slope be? Negative 3. The coefficient for x is negative 3. What would the y-intercept be? Positive 9. So 9 goes for B. We just found the slope and the y-intercept of that equation. Number 2. Think about it. Don't shout out the answer. What is that coefficient for the letter x? All right, I want to hear you say it. 1, 2, 3. 1. What number is in front of the x? There's a 1 there. In algebra, we don't write 1x with the number. We just write it as a plain x. But we all know that there's always a 1 in front of it. All right, what about the y-intercept? What number do I write there? Good. Negative 4. You have to take the sign here. The sign goes with it. It's a negative 4, where the first one was a positive 9, but we don't normally write a positive symbol when we are just writing plain numbers. We know they're all positive unless there's a negative sign there. All right, and number 3, we're going to come back to this one at the end. So I want you to just leave this one blank. We're going to go on to number 4. Write x equals 12. We're also going to wait on it as well. Go on to number 5 and write y equals negative 3/5 x plus 2. Number 6, write y equals negative x plus 1. All right, see if you can do number 5 and number 6 by yourself. Fill in the value of m, the slope, the value of b, the y-intercept, for 5 and for 6. All right, here we go. Number 5. Slope equals 1, 2, 3. All right, let's try it again. 1, 2, 3. Negative 3 over 5. Good. Negative 3/5. All right, what is our y-intercept? 2. What is our y-intercept? 2. What? Dose. That works. 2. All right, number 6. Number 6. I'm going to have to call on someone this time. Number 6, Zach, what did you get for the slope? Negative 1. Good, that didn't trick you. The negative sign in front of x we know represents a negative 1. And give me this y-intercept. What did you get, Katie? Positive 1. All right, last 2 you're going to do by yourself. Go ahead and copy them and write. And we're going to go over the answers. Slope will always stay a fraction because we're going to write it as rise over run so that we can graph it. And if it's written as a decimal, you can't do the rise and the run. Good question. Great question. So we're going to continue to keep them as fractions for this. All right, Sophie, what'd you get for the slope of number 7? 1/7. Awesome. Kat, what'd you get for the y-intercept for number 7? -3. Good. You got to take that sign with it. Number 8. Riley, what's the slope for number 8? Sorry, Cameron. I called you your sister. Sorry. All right, and what is the value of B, Emily? 8. That's the y-intercept is 8. All right, now let's look at the ones that we skipped. If you go back and look, you notice that number 1 had our y equals mx plus b form. So did number 2. So did number 5, 6, 7, and 8. They all had the y equals mx plus b form. The ones that we skipped, number 3 and number 4, do not. They are missing one of the letters. In algebra, when an equation is missing one of those letters and it's in slope-intercept form, it means that that line never crosses that axis and why the letter's not in the equation. All right, so let's think about our x and y axis. The horizontal axis that goes from left to right, is that the x or is that the y axis? Which one? This is your x axis. And the one that goes vertically up and down is known as the y axis. All right, so the ones that we already did, numbers 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, and 8, they all had both letters x and y. So they're lines that cross both of those axes. Maybe they cross up here, or maybe it's a line that crosses down here, or they could be a line that goes this way really steep, or this way not so steep. But they are all going to be kind of diagonally crossing both axes. The other ones, the two that we've saved, they don't cross both of them. That's why they only have one of the letters. So look at number 3. Let's start with this one. Y equals -5. It has the letter y in it, so it crosses the y-axis. So it's going to cross this line here. It will not cross this one. So if it crosses this one, which direction does it have to go? Horizontally. And any horizontal line is going to run parallel to the x-axis, so it will never cross it. So at x equals -5, you go down to -5 on the y-axis, and it'll cross down here. So what type of slope would this line have? 0 slope. So right here for M, we're going to write 0. Because it's going to be a horizontal line. Let's label that. Horizontal. All right, and where is it going to cross the y-axis, did we say? At what number? What number would this be? At -5. So the y-intercept is -5. So for the line y equals -5, it's going to be a horizontal line with a 0 slope, and it's going to cross the y-axis at -5. All right, let's do number 4. Number 4 says x equals 12. So for this one, I'm going to label this one real fast as y equals -5. All right, for this next one, I'm going to do another graph. I'm going to use y. This is my y-axis, and this is the x-axis. All right, for this one, I'm going to have x equals 12. All right, so it's not going to cross the y-axis this time. It's only going to cross the x. So what kind of line would cross this one and never intersect with this one? A vertical line. And where is it going to be vertical at? Positive 12. So on the x-axis, you would go all the way over to positive 12, and that's where it would cross. This would be x equals 12. All right, so let's label it. If you have x equals any number, that graph is going to be a vertical line. And what type of slope did we say vertical lines have? They have an undefined slope. And where did they cross the y-axis? Where is this line right here that I just drew going to ever cross this y-axis? It won't. Remember, they're parallel. They're never going to cross because they're both vertical. They'll go on and on forever in both directions, but they will never cross. So the B, the y-intercept, for any undefined line, any vertical line, does not exist. D-N-E does not exist. Some people thought this was the letter O-N-E, one, but it's not. It's D-N-E, does not exist. All right, so we have 8 different types of equations now that we've looked at. We've identified the slope and the y-intercept for each of them. There were 2 special cases. We have the special case of the y equals a number, horizontal line, and the x equals a number, the vertical line. If you still feel like you're not very familiar with these 2, we're going to continue to work on them. If you can get the other type, you're doing great. Here we go. Now they're going to give us a graph. And they want us to do the same thing. Identify the slope and identify the y-intercept. So this is on the second page, or on the back of your paper, on the second page of notes. And this is the first graph. At the top it says, calculate the slope and the y-intercept of each line, and then write an equation in slope-intercept form. All right, so the first thing we want to do is calculate the slope. Well, in the equations, it was easy. We just had to look at the coefficient of x. What value was in front of the x? In this case, we don't have an equation to look at and to do that. So we got to calculate it another way. And we do that by finding the rise over the run. So find the first point on the graph. Start on the left side, and it's right here. We're going to go from that point to the next point by doing rise and run. It's going to form little triangles on your paper. Take your pencil and put it on the first point. We're going to count how many units we rise and then run to the right to get to the next point. So we're going to go straight up 1, 2, and we're going to run to the right 1 unit. So that was rise 1, 2, run right 1. Let's try it again. Go to the next point. Rise 1, 2, run 1. Rise 1, 2, run 1 to the right. So our rise was 2, run 1. So our M is 2 over 1. All right, for the value of B, to find the B, we are now going to look for where the line, the red line, crosses the y-axis. Your y-axis is the vertical one. So start at the bottom and go up until you find where they cross. And it's right here at this point. So if this is 0, 0, this would be 1, 2, 3. Right there's where it crosses. So that would be a positive 3. So now we have enough information to write our equation. I'm going to go ahead and remind you by writing the formula. Y equals mx plus b. We want to now insert the value of b that we just found from our rise and run and the value of b that we found from the y-intercept into this equation. So now we'll have y equals, what was our m? 2 over 1. How would we write that in an equation? Just a 2. So 2x, and then the value of b is 3. What kind of 3? So plus 3. And we just wrote the equation for this red line on the graph. Good job. All right, let's do another one. Abby, do you have a question? When you're writing the equation, we want to leave it like in this form. It doesn't have to be a fraction. If we were going to go from equation to a graph, we would make it a fraction then. So the fractions are used from the graphing, but when you write it in simplified form for the final equation. Great question. Do you have a question? Okay. Let's do another example and it'll help, okay? Let's look at another one. Here we go. Example 2. We're going to start at the lowest point on the farthest left, so that would be here. And we're going to do rise and run to get to the next point. So we're going to go up. Here we go. Put your pencil on the first point. Go with me. 1, 2, 3. So we went up 3. Now we're going to the right. 1, 2. Let's check it by going to a couple more points to make sure. Up 1, 2, 3. Right 1, 2. Rise 1, 2, 3. Right 1, 2. So our rise was 3 and our run was 2. And that's one of the reasons why we leave it as a fraction. All right, now let's find our value of b. So start at the bottom of your y-axis and follow it up until you meet where the red line crosses. And there it is. What number value is this? -2. Here's your 0, 0, so it's down 1, 2. So that'd be -2. The sign goes with it. So now we're going to write our equation. Remember our formula, y equals mx plus b. We're going to plug in our values that we found for m and b. So we get y equals, slope is 3 over 2, x minus 2, because our b was a negative this time, so no plus sign. It becomes a negative. So the equation for this line is y equals 3/2 x minus 2. Let's do another one. Starting at the furthest left point, I want you to calculate your rise and your run. Ready, set, go. Try that one by yourself. Rise and run. You should be drawing the little triangles. We're on this one, baby. Oh, you already did it. That one's going to be different, so just wait. You got to be very careful with your counting. All right, here we go. I'm going to start at the first one. I'm going to rise and run. So how many did you go up? How many did you rise? 1. And we're going to run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Rise 1, run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Rise 1, run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our slope was rise 1, run 5, 1/5. Raise your hand if you got it. Awesome. Now find the B. All right, what'd you get? +3. Follow your y-axis up, and it meets right here between 2 and 4, so that would be 3. Now put it together. We get y equals 1/5 x plus 3 because it was positive. There's the equation for this line. We're going to do one more. This one's different. What do you notice about it? It's going downhill from left to right, which means the slope of this one is negative. So I can already tell you that this number right here is going to be a negative just by looking at the direction of the line. Okay, now we're still going to start on the left side at the first point. But notice this time we're not going up. We can't rise. We're going to go down. So that's where our negative comes into play. Instead of rising up, we're going to rise down 1. So that makes a negative 1. We're going to run 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. So we're still running into the right in the same direction. Down 1, right 4. Down 1, right 4. So that would be a negative 1 over 4. Find the b value. Follow your y-axis up. It meets right here between 6 and 8, so that would be a positive 7. So our equation is y equals negative 1/4 x plus 7. Awesome job. You guys wrote linear equations from graphs today. We're going to finish this lesson on Monday with the rest of the examples, and then we're going to start another unit or another lesson as well and build on this. Have a super fun weekend.